Rather than a little devotional today, I thought I'd tell you all a story of an experience I had in Saudi Arabia that has a pretty obvious spiritual implication. Um, you've heard me say before, they drive like crazy maniacs over there, and as a result, have a lot of car wrecks. And one of the schools I was teaching at was a young man's school. It was most of the students were 18 to 21 age group, and one of my students got killed in a car wreck because he was driving on the shoulder of the road, probably at 100 miles an hour. Um, and I had a heads up because one of the other, anyway, I knew that had happened. So that next morning when I went into school, I was kind of anticipating that there would be a sense of loss and, you know, people would be down and sad. Uh, if that happened here in America, all the girls would be crying and there would be some mourning going on. And I walked into school that morning and it was absolutely no different than any other morning. And the guys knew that what had happened, of course. Uh, and I thought, well, this is a little different. Okay. Um, and I waited. I didn't say anything first hour because this particular student was in my second hour class. So second hour, I was taking the roll, and it was an intermediate level class. So most of the guys could have a reasonable conversation in English. And so I said, well, you guys, I'm sure, Ahmed was killed yesterday in a car wreck. Very, very sad thing. And they just looked at me like I'd told them what the temperature was outside. No response at all. And, some of this I anticipated, but some I didn't. And then I said, well, how do you guys feel about that? I said, what do y'all think? And there was one guy who was kind of speaking for the class, and he said, oh, it was God's will. If he'd be just as dead if he was laying in bed. Okay, so Islam has an extreme fatalism that everything that happens is the will of God. The fact that he was passing on the shoulder of the highway at 100 miles an hour had nothing to do with him dying in their way of thinking. So that's freaky in itself. And I said, okay. And I said, well, and basically I was about ready to break the law, which I did. I said, well, is he in heaven? And the guy says, only God knows. If he did more good deeds than bad deeds, he's in heaven. If he didn't, he's in hell. And that answer I actually expected, so I was ready for it. And I said, wow. I said, I sure hope you're wrong about that. Because if that's the case, I don't have a chance of making it to heaven. I said, as you guys know, I'm a Christian and Jesus Christ paid for my sins on the cross. He sacrificed so that I could have forgiveness. So I don't have to make it to heaven just by doing good deeds. And I kind of left it there. Just that enough would have, if any of those guys had narked on me, would have gotten me kicked out of the country. But here's the thing I wanted to tell you. When I said that about, I don't have a chance, every one of those guys did this. Because it's built into our human soul to know that we cannot be good enough to present ourselves to God. And every religion tries to set up some kind of a man-made system to convince ourselves that we can be good enough to be acceptable to God, and it never works. For by grace are you saved through faith. All right, you guys have a great day, great weekend.